Hey guys, Austin here with FoodisOurFuel, and today I've got another recipe video for you. Now growing up, one of my favorite meals of all time was the shepherd's pie. My mom would always make it with ground beef, cream corn, peas, mashed potatoes, and cheese sprinkled on top. Now, I'm pretty much keeping that formula the same with a few tweaks for personal preference, as well as to make it a little more nutritious for us. So the first tweak I'm making is, instead of mashed regular potatoes, I'm using sweet potatoes. Now if you're not a fan of sweet potatoes, feel free to sub that out and use regular potatoes. The cheapest option for you is going to be russet potatoes, but I know quality of flavor wise, the yellow or the red potatoes are probably going to be better off there. But for the sake of this video, for the sake of this recipe, the description and the ingredients are just going to be for the sweet potatoes. Also, instead of creamed corn, I'm using frozen sweet corn, and then we're going to put that in a blender with some salt and pepper seasoning, right, to add a little flavor to the dish, and blend that up to kind of give it the creamed texture, because canned cream corn typically has a lot of added sugar as well as sodium. So at least here we can add to our liking, and if you do still want a little sweeter, at least this way you can control how much sweetener is in it. And then lastly, instead of ground beef, I'm going to be using lean ground turkey. I'm not sure if I said it in a previous video, but I tend to stick to the leaner meats. So that's chicken, turkey, fish. I'm not opposed to eating ground beef, all the time. It's just not something I usually eat on a regular basis, because of the increased risk of, chronic illness that comes with eating too much red meat. So with that being said, most everything else is staying the same. We're keeping the peas, we're keeping the shredded cheese on top. And I actually do add a little bit of bell peppers and onions on that bottom layer with the turkey. Just to add another, a little bit more vegetables, a little bit more flavor. So with that being said, I'm gonna go get my kitchen garb on, and then we're gonna head over to this other counter where we're gonna start to cook. So I'll see you in a sec. All right, welcome back. And so the first thing we're going to do, and because this is going to take probably the longest out of everything, is we're going to take our sweet potatoes, right, and we're going to scrub them. We're going to rinse them off in the sink. We're going to scrub them. You want to clean them off. Nice little potato brush helps out. This is also really great for cleaning off fresh carrots. I've used it for beets and turnips, and so this little potato brush goes a long way for a lot of things. So all we're going to do is come over here to the sink. I know you can't see me, I apologize. Clean off the peel. Give them a nice scrub. Scrub it up. And I like to leave my peel on for a couple of reasons. One, I don't mind it. I think it adds a little texture, a little flavor. But two, the peel of many fruits and vegetables is a great source of fiber. So when you peel a vegetable or a fruit, you remove a lot of that fiber from that vegetable or fruit. It supports healthy digestion and bowel movement. So I like to leave my peel on there. So all we're going to do is we're really going to cut this into smaller pieces. And the reason we're doing that is because we want to be able to mash these, right? So the smaller they are, the quicker they're going to cook through. Because what we're going to do is we're going to take them and put them in a big enough pan to fit, so a large saucepan usually. And we're going to boil them for a bit until they are soft all the way through. And when I say soft all the way through, I mean you better be able to stick a fork all the way through it. So I'm just kind of cutting them into smaller, manageable pieces. Doesn't have to be like, you know, minimal cubes. It doesn't need to be a dice or anything crazy like that. Sweet potatoes are admittedly a little tougher to cut through. That's why I'm using my second hand to kind of help. I'm not putting too much pressure on the end of the knife because I don't want to slam it against the board and damage my blade. Just putting just enough to be able to help cut through the thick fibers of the sweet potato, because unlike a regular potato, they're not very kind. So once you get these cut up, like I said, we're just going to take them and put them into a big saucepan, which, go ahead and turn so you can see, something like this. And you're going to boil them. So, go ahead and get this one cut. Alright. So now that we got that, take our saucepan, fill it with some water, fill it, you know, so that it's deep enough that when you put the potato in there, it's going to be fully submerged. They are going to float a little bit, but Alright, so we're going to put this on the burner and turn this up to high, and you can go ahead and throw your potato in there. It doesn't have to be boiling yet. And then once that water gets to a boil, then you just want to turn it down to a low boil, so maybe medium heat or the notch right above medium heat, and then let it boil for as long as it takes until they boil through. And like I said, you can stick a fork through it. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut up my other sweet potato here, and when I come back, we're going to take care of our bell pepper and onion and get our meat starting to cook, because that's probably the next longest cooking item. So give me just a moment and I'll be right back. Alright, so while I was gone, I took the liberty of setting up a skillet on the stove now. It's warming up to just under medium heat, more like medium low, kind of right in the middle, for our ground turkey. And while we're waiting on that to heat up, I'm going to go ahead and take care of prepping our pepper and our onion. So, as with the sweet potatoes, you want to give your pepper a little rinse. I'm going to cut off the top. And then just going to we're just giving it a rough dice here. Oh, I guess it would have helped if I took out the core, huh? I usually don't make that mistake. Actually, I don't think I've ever made that mistake. I'm getting ahead of myself. Anyway, take out the core, throw that away. Alright, and then we'll just kind of cut this in half. Cut this in half. Right. And there may very well be a more efficient method to cutting up a bell pepper. Actually, I'm almost certain there probably is. I just haven't learned it yet. So for this video, this is how I'm going to kind of roughly chop my bell pepper. Just take each quarter, cut it into strips, and there we go. Pretty straightforward, pretty simple process. Well, I cut those a little large, but oh well. This ain't no 3-star Michelin restaurant. And that's really the point. You know, home cooking is not about being fanciful. You certainly can go out of your way to be extra, you know, on occasion. It doesn't hurt to be extra artistic with your food. Me personally, not a fan. You know, I mean, you can tell just by the name of the channel, I view food more as fuel, not as art. So I'm not, you know, I'm not gonna go rage if my food doesn't look like, you know, something that belongs in a museum with the Mona Lisa. But, yeah, really, you know, the point is that cooking is something everybody can enjoy, and it doesn't have to be complicated, right? And especially healthful cooking. It can be quick, it can be simple, and it can still be delicious. So, got my bell pepper here. I'm just going to kind of put it over here in this little bowl I've set to the side for later, once we get the meat rolling. Our sweet potatoes are almost boiling. And so now we've got our onion. Okay. Alright. So when you get your onion out and you see this root, don't cut this root off. This root is going to be your friend. What you do want to do is cut the little top off, but you don't cut the root with all the little like hay strands, pretty much. Turn these down real quick. Alright, so now, well, that could have been a little bit better. There we go. So now we cut that piece off. All you're going to do now is, where the root is, take your knife, line it up with the middle of the onion, and just cut straight down. Cut it in half. Once you've cut it in half, it's going to be a lot easier to peel. So go ahead and get that peel off. This is always my favorite part, you know. Love peeling onions. Also, I happen to learn that by not cutting the root off, you save yourself some tears. Literally. Apparently when you cut the root off, that's what kind of activates the onion, and it sends out that whatever it is, I don't know, chemical enzyme that makes you cry, you know, when it gets in your eyes. So, you know, really two birds with one stone here. You don't cry, and we didn't cut it in half just for the sake of it being easier to peel. Right? That is one benefit, but that's really not even the main reason. The main reason we did that is because it's going to be a lot easier to dice now, which is what I'm going for with this recipe. Now, for this recipe, I only plan on using half of an onion, so, you know, pick your half, whichever half you want. I'm going to use this one just because it looks like it's a little bit bigger. And so all we're going to do now is you're going to take your onion, turn it so that you're cutting toward the root, but don't go all the way through, and you're just going to make some incisions, right, as evenly sized apart as you can. Might be a little tough at first, especially on the ends. Probably be easier if I was using a shorter knife too. Santoku would probably be more appropriate for this. Alright. Once you get those, you know, cut across, it kind of looks like a bunch of bars, right, if you can see those. And now all you're going to do is turn it across, and you're just going to chop. Definitely be careful when you're chopping. Something I'm not very good at, but I'm working on, is the claw. It does help when you do it right, for sure, except for this top layer of onion that doesn't want to cut. That's crazy. So this top layer is not being very kind to me. So we're gonna skip that. There we go. Now it's cutting a lot better. Alright. So now that we did that, got all of our onion here. And you see it comes out nice and diced. And all we did was cut one way and then the other. So now that we got that prepped, by now the skillet should be warm, and it is. So we're gonna go ahead and prep our ground turkey. So let me get this onion in this bowl real quick. And then we'll get our ground turkey going. Alright. So let me set you up here. So now you can kind of see the counter I'm working on. So, got our ground turkey here. All we're going to do is pop this open. Maybe. Yep, there we go. Alright. Oh, and peep the apron and the little hat. It was a Christmas gift. So I figured I'd go ahead and rock it out, you know. Anyway, so we got our ground turkey. All we're going to do is take this ground turkey and drop it in the skillet. You don't need to worry about adding any oil to it unless you want to. Might add a little flavor. And then once you do that, you definitely want to go ahead and wash your hands. Things running along, and then once you wash your hands, you're going to want to hurry up and grab some kind of spatula, preferably something that's solid enough to kind of cut through the meat a little bit. I mean, ground turkey is pretty soft. Right, it's not like a piece of steak, but something that you can break the meat apart with and kind of into small ground pieces. So for me, that's a wooden spatula here, and I'm just going to go ahead Alright. So obviously, as it cooks, you're going to want to keep doing this little by little. You're going to want to chop it up because as it cooks, it will cook together into large chunks. And we don't want a turkey patty, right? We just want some ground turkey pieces. It's like pieces of ground beef and chili, right? They're really, they're smaller pieces, right? It might not be super fine, right? It's not going to be crazy small, like a little nugget, but we want pieces, not a large pile. So, and I'm going to set a paper towel down to sit this on because I don't want raw turkey on my counter or my stove. So, okay, now that that's taken care of, now we're going to go ahead and take care of our corn and our peas. So I'm going to grab a strainer out, put that in the sink, and that's going to be for when the vegetables are done boiling. Get out a small pot or pan that you can cook those in, and you can use the same pan for both. But we're going to do the corn first because that is what we're going to put into the blender and blend up here in a minute. So doing that first, right, saves you some dishes. That way, you can use the same pan, right? Move the corn out of the way, put the peas in there and start cooking them. And you only have to use one colander, or you don't have to, try and use another bowl to move the peas out of the way so that you can strain the corn, right? If you do the corn first. So I'm gonna go ahead and get some of that stuff set up, and I'll be right back with you. All right. So I got my colander here. I got this little pot on the stove heating up for our corn and our peas. So the only other thing I can really do right now is shred our cheese. Now, the reason that I get a block of cheese instead of getting the pre-shredded is just because they add unnecessary preservatives and most times even unnecessary added color to your pre-shredded cheese. So, you know, the easiest way to avoid that is just get you a block of cheese. And now here I have Monterey Jack. I'll be completely honest, normally with my shepherd's pie I just use cheddar. You know, mild or sharp, I've used both. It's just whatever you prefer. The only reason I have Monterey Jack today is because when I went to the store, somehow, some way, they were completely out of cheddar, other than like extra sharp, and I didn't want extra sharp, so I'm gonna go ahead and find a nice little spot. There's a piece of onion. Cut our cheese open. And we're just going to grate this whole bar. If you have a cheese grater with multiple sides, I recommend using the smaller side. The cheese, when it's in that smaller size, is going to melt a lot easier, and it's going to be a finer grain. There's going to be more of it to spread versus if you go with a coarse shred. So you're going to see the coarse shred, but that's because I'm right-handed, so I'm going to be shredding on this side. But I won't bore you with having to watch me shred this for the next minute or two, but I will come back at the end to kind of show you what it looks like once we're all done. So we got our cheese cut up, and while I was grating the cheese, I was able to go ahead and get our corn in this pot. So if you're using frozen vegetables like I am for this recipe, the directions are going to be on the package, but just in case you aren't familiar, usually when you're cooking vegetables like this, and you're just boiling them in water, you're going to bring the water to a boil first, put the frozen vegetables in the water, it's going to stop boiling, and all you're going to do is wait, keep it at the same heat, wait for it to come back to a boil, and then turn it down to a simmer, and let it simmer for as long as the package says to, or until it reaches a desired texture for you. So I'm going to bring you over here real quick just to kind of give you a close-up view of the shredded cheese, right? We got a nice fine shred here with our little half slab of cheese that you can never really shred because otherwise you'll be shredding your fingers, right? So I'm going to go ahead and check our sweet potatoes real quick. Maybe. I can't really get one. There we go. So the sweet potatoes are feeling like they're, yeah, I mean, even the peel is coming off. So thinking our sweet potatoes are ready to mash. Our ground turkey's doing pretty good too. See, it's trying to cake up on it. Now at this stage, the ground turkey is looking pre-cooked. And so what I'm going to go ahead and do is add our, not our salt, I'm sorry. Add our peppers and onions to this skillet so that they can kind of wilt down and the flavors will kind of meld together as they cook together. Make sure our ground turkey is looking nice and ground up. Really? There we go. Alright, our corn is at a boil. We're going to turn that down now. And really, the corn doesn't have to cook too long. All we're really doing here is trying to get the corn to thaw out and be soft so that we can blend it. So really not a huge deal, but now before the corn is done, all we're going to do is take our sweet potatoes and strain those. Right, we want to drain that water. Be careful to not burn yourself with the huge amount of steam you can see coming out. Make sure you turn that burner off. I'm going to run a little water in this pan so it's not so hot. Okay. I'm actually going to pour that over the potatoes so they cool down just a little bit. Alright. So I'm going to slide our cheese out of the way. I'm going to grab my potato masher. There it is. And so this is my potato masher. Pretty simple, straightforward, basic. This is Farberware. No, I'm not sponsored. Just kind of showing you what a potato masher looks like. Of course, there are other ones, more fancy ones that have a little more to them. What I mean by that is like this one's pretty bare bones, right? You just kind of have the ribs. There's some that also have like a flat part that has gaps in it, so you press the potatoes through that, and then they also get pressed through the ribs. But anyway, fancy ones aside, you're just going to take your potato masher and do with it like the name says. You're going to mash your potatoes. And sweet potatoes are pretty easy. If you're using regular potatoes, you might, and I say might lightly, you might not. You might need to add a little water. I know my mom always liked to add a little milk for hers to give it that nice creamy texture. But when it comes to sweet potatoes, you don't have to add a thing. You know, when they get boiled like this, they're already pretty smooth, pretty spreadable, pretty mashable. So all you got to do is the fun part. And it don't take long either. With that out of the way, I'm going to go ahead and take our corn here and strain it. Right. And then immediately, I'll fill this pan back up so we can start heating it up and getting our peas ready. Turn that back up to high. We got our bag of green peas right here. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and get the corn in the blender. I'll take you over to the other counter so I can kind of walk you through that. So give me just a sec. Actually, you know what? I don't even need to pause it. You can just come with me. So, got my blender here. Got my salt and my pepper. I'm going to take, find it. We're going to take a half teaspoon of each of these. I got my quarter teaspoon out because it's a little easier to get salt out of this type of container. I hate these Morton's containers, but it was the only one I could find when I was at the store. So all we're going to do, we're going to grab our corn. Actually, I'm going to grab my blender, take it over to the corn, so I'll be right back. So we're going to go ahead and blend the corn a little bit first before we add our seasonings. It really don't take much. So blend it up a little bit. And we're going to get our salt and our pepper. Got that, and now we're just going to put it back in here, and we're just going to pulse it kind of get those seasonings spread throughout, so just kind of... Alright, that should be good. I'm going to check on our turkey here real quick. So, I'll be right back, and then I'll give you a peek inside. Turkey's cooking pretty well. So anyway, here's the inside, right? So you can see around the edges we still have some whole, unblended corn kernels, and that's okay. Gives it a little texture, right? We don't just want complete mush. And the salt and pepper are finely blended. So that's good to go. We can just leave that until we're ready to assemble everything into the final dish. I think the only thing we're waiting on, is the peas. So I'm gonna go ahead and give you a little break. We'll I'll stand here and wait on the peas, and you guys can just skip to the next part, right? The fun part. So when the peas are ready, and we have everything to assemble the dish at the end, I'll be back to greet you. Welcome back. It's been a little bit, but finally the peas are done, the turkey is done, everything is ready to finish it off. So what you're gonna need now, and forgive me for not mentioning this sooner, it will be like first thing in the directions in the description, but you're gonna want to preheat your oven to about 400 degrees, and roughly you're going to want an oven safe 9x13 dish. It could be a cake pan if that's all you have, right? But glass dish is probably the best. You'll have a better time getting things out of the glass dish. It won't stick as bad as it might to a metal cake pan, but roughly a 9x13. And so let me see if I can angle this camera a little better so you can see the dish. So we're going to start on the bottom with our turkey, pepper, and onion mix. Just going to get all that in there. The onion smells good. That. Alright. And we're just going to spread that out so it covers the bottom of the dish, right? That way everything's kind of layered. Alright. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to put the peas on here. Promise I'm not playing with it. I'm like almost OCD when it comes to detail. Like if I notice one side it looks a little higher, I'm going to try and fix that. So we're going to go ahead and take our peas, just dump those in there. Same deal with that, just kind of spread those around. Alright, now we're going to take our creamed corn. So if you haven't already, you're going to want to remove your blade from your blender so you can get like a fork or a spoon like I have here to be able to scrape that corn out. Because trust me, it's not going to want to pour out like a smoothie. A spoon is probably better than a fork, but I already had a fork out, so I figured I might as well make use of what I have. I'm still probably going to have to get a spoon because I don't want to let that go to waste. Alright. See if I can get this last scoop here. Okay. We don't need a spoon. That's good. Same deal here. Try and cover the dish as best as you can. Alright. The corn is not probably going to be as friendly as the other two, right? It's a little more wet. It's going to stick, kind of like you can see it doing to me right now.
It's also not going to be as thick of a layer as the peas and meat. Right, and I think you can obviously alter how much there is to spread by how much you blend it. So obviously the longer you blend it, the more mashed it's going to become. Therefore it's going to be a smaller volume. But nonetheless, right, we've got our corn spread nicely across. I think this right corner is higher than everything else. Alright. Next, our sweet potatoes go on top of this. And if you do have if you cooked these in a nonstick pan, if you have any kind of nonstick pan, or even if it is just a regular stainless steel pan, I recommend using wooden utensils. They just have a better chance of not damaging the pan or the coating of it, whereas metal on metal is more likely to cause some damage or scrape off some of that coating, and that nonstick coating is not something you want to eat, right? So I do recommend getting yourself some wooden utensils if you don't have any. I mean, they're all around great tools. I use them plenty here in the kitchen. That's actually mostly what I use, aside from the occasional rubber spatula. So now that we've got our potatoes, make sure those are nice and spread across, right? Make sure we don't waste that. All right, sit that in there. And lastly is our cheese, right? So, take our cheese. Just gonna kind of sprinkle it across, right? Yes, I'm gonna even it out, don't worry. I don't plan on leaving it like that. Or do I? Alright, so definitely, just with your hand, just kind of rub across the top, try to get the cheese to spread across. Alright, we want it to be, again, evenly layered. We don't want any huge clumps like this in one spot. Try to break that up with our hand here. I'm sorry, I'm blocking the whole view with the cutting board, aren't I? That's my bad. Alright. We got our cheese pretty well layered. It's not perfect, right? But once it melts, it will kind of bleed into whatever spots might be a little lackluster. And then we do have our little piece here, so I'm going to tear that. I'm just going to put that over there as kind of a patch. Put that over here. And last but not least, we're going to slide it into the oven. So, now, you're probably wondering, well, actually, no, you probably know why we're putting it in the oven. We're putting it in the oven so that the cheese can melt over the top. I kind of already said that while I was putting the cheese on there, right? Because everything else is already cooked. We've already mashed the sweet potatoes. The ground turkey's fully cooked through. The peas and the corn, I mean, really don't even technically need cooked, right? You could just thaw those out and eat those. So everything is really like cooked and ready to eat. We're just popping it in the oven so the cheese can melt. And that really doesn't take long. On 400 degrees, we're looking roughly about 10 minutes. Depending on your oven, right? Your oven might take another minute or two, or it might be even more efficient. It might melt a little quicker. But once that cheese is melted, you're ready to go, right? If it's dinner for tonight, serve it up fresh for the fam. If you're in a situation like me, right, and you're meal prepping for the next few days, right, this is going to make like 4 meals for me. Anyway, before I get too far ahead of myself, I'm going to let that cook, let the cheese melt, and then once it's finished, I'll slide that bad boy out and show you guys what the finished product looks like. Alright. Welcome back to the finale of our sweet potato shepherd's pie. So as you can see on the top, our cheese is nice and melted. It's a little bubbly, right? So this is the finished product. I mean, you know, if, like I said, if you're ready to serve, right, grab you a spoon, scoop your portion out, yada yada, eat up, enjoy. If you're meal prepping, right, like I said, this is about 4 meals for me, so I'm gonna just cut it into fourths, put it in my meal prep bowls, and I'm good to go for lunch or dinner for the next few days. But let me see if I can get you a view here of the layers. Sorry. There you go. So you can see peppers, the peas, the cheese, potatoes, corn, right? See the meat down there on the bottom. So, all right. Well, that's all I've got for you today. Like I said, the specific ingredient ratios and the procedure steps will also be in the description. So if there's anything you missed, or like I said, if there's anything I missed, I forgot to mention preheating your oven until the step of, it will be down there in the description. So with that being said, I hope you all enjoyed. I'm glad that you joined me for this. I hope you learned something new. Or at the very least, I hope you enjoy the meal. So, I'll see you guys next time. You have a wonderfully blessed rest of your day. Peace.